great video. Here we go.
So, I'm Steve Wheeler, and I work in poetry. I'm a publisher, as well as a performance poet, and I'm very pleased to be sat in a bird-ridden garden here in early summer, late spring, in mid-Devon with Charlene Phare, who is the author of that book there.
Your bird.
And I'd say welcome to your own garden, because
Thank you.
this is your garden.
It is.
But it's nice to be here.
Thank you.
Firstly, I mean, Charlene, poetry, it means so many things to so many different people. So what does it mean to you? I mean, what is poetry to start with, and what does it mean to you?
For a start, I just thought poetry was whatever you want it to be. It can mean, like you say, different things to different people. For me, as a child, it was about the rhyming. And as I've got more and more into poetry, I've realised it's not about the rhyming. There's so much more to it. To me, it is escapism from your own everyday life. And I think that we need that as poets.
Do you think a lot of people find it like, escapist? Is it cathartic, perhaps? It's a way of getting your emotions out, getting your feelings out.
The more that I read from other poets and bards, yes. There's obviously, they've had issues in their life, they're going through issues. And so, yeah, you see that a lot.
You use the word bard a lot. I mean, you use it in your shows a lot as well. What is it about this word bard? It's almost like Old English, isn't it? Why don't you just say poets?
Because to me...
Go on.
To me, it's taking that poet to another level. It's saying, you're better than a poet. You are as good as the Shakespeare. And so if you've got somebody that's just starting out, got a little bit the wobbles, do I need to post it? How do I start to post it? Then give it the bard, give it the bard and big them up, because that will get them to posting their next poem just like that. You tell them that they are, they've done this wrong, they've done that wrong, the meter's out. I mean, I was checking the car meter, you know what I mean?
The meter.
I'm like, what the hell?
Does the meter run out?
To me, I thought meter was rhyme, but obviously, there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
So, for me, I think it's about aspiring to inspire. It's, don't put people down. We have enough of that in life. We need to big these people up. I do use the word bard a lot.
Yeah, I guess I hear what you're saying about trying to be like Shakespeare. I mean, it's I read a poem earlier on today, didn't I, about that, about hard to be a bard, and Shakespeare, writing stuff that really sickens because you'll never be as good. But will we ever be as good, or could we be better? I mean, Shakespeare is the standard, isn't he, really, for poetry around the world? Everyone looks up to him. Was he that good?
To today's standard? No. There are far better, and that's the other reason for using this old-fashioned word. I can't even understand Shakespeare. Half the time it's Old English, it's a very back then. Let's find the Shakespeares of today. And,
So Shakespeare, a lot of people reject his work because they don't understand it, because it's written in all this, I know he wrote a lot of sonnets, he also wrote a lot of other structured poetry, which was embedded within his plays, but, what is it about that Old English that puts people off?
I think because that's what they learnt in school.
Yeah.
And if you weren't inspired so much by your teacher, for whatever reason, I've just found out relatively recently that I've got dyslexia. Well, with that, I have now got a diploma and got straight A's in my assignments. I've never been a straight A student in my life. I left school with E's, F's and G's, in my GCSEs. And so I thought, I knew I had an issue, but it wasn't until I went to college just 13, 14 years ago that I was told, yes, you've got a problem, it's dyslexia. And, so I find that writing things down in my words, I learn I can learn that. And I think as you grow up in life, you learn your set styles. And I think poetry is a little bit about that.
So it's about not just expressing yourself and about getting emotions and feelings out. It's also about practice to get better at communicating in that written style, whether it's whether it's got a rhyme and or whether it's got a meter to it, whatever it is. Poetry is poetry. You see, I mean, there's so many different types of poetry. So, who are your favourite poets and why?
I would say Pam Ayres.
Pam Ayres.
I mean, yes, straight away, you know. And I love to read somebody's poem that is, to me, Pam Ayres' style, because I can add a bit of character to that. It's already got the character there, and you just pull it out the page. Spike Milligan, you know, it isn't till recently that I've heard of Keats.
Who, sorry?
Keats.
Oh, Keats, John Keats.
John Keats, yes. And I can't even remember his name.
Edgar Allan Poe?
Yes, him.
Yeah. The Raven.
The Raven, yes.
Yeah.
And that came up on Dreamers Cafe recently, and so, you know, that fascinated me. And the more that I learn about poets, bards, whatever, I want to know more. You know, there's so much to it. Robert Burns, you know, and I love Rudyard Kipling. Was that the if you can keep your head when all around you are losing?
It's simply called If, isn't it? Yeah.
Just
It's interesting because you mentioned a lot of poets that are either comic or dark.
Yeah.
You know, Edgar Allan Poe was very dark in it was almost horror, wasn't it? A lot of the stuff he wrote. Rudyard Kipling was, I think, an interesting character because he wrote during the colonial times, and he was very much of the upper class and the stiff upper lip, English gentleman type. Often criticised now for his colonial kind of ideas. Yes. But I mean, they're all interesting poets in their own right, in both ways.
I love that.
But this here is your book, and it's available on Amazon. It's called Pure Poetry. But why the title Pure Poetry?
Because I've set up a poetry group on Facebook. Originally it was called Poetry in Motion.
Right.
Whereas people were trying to find it and saying to me, have you got 30,000 members? And I'm like, no, I've got like 12 members.
Well, 12,000?
No, just 12.
Just 12, right.
Just 12.
Enough for a football team.
Yes. And, you know, within 2 weeks I decided, actually, and the talent that was coming onto the page, it was actually set up as a page for my own blog originally. And a friend pointed out to me that actually it was a group. So it wasn't fair just to print my own work and say no to everybody else. And I thought, actually, that's really, really selfish. I'll set up a page as my blog, and I will call my group Poetry in Motion. And then, like I say, I changed the name when I found out that I wasn't the only Poetry in Motion on there. Right. I know there's a Pure Poetries on there. The name of the book coincides with the name of the group because for my debut book, I couldn't think of another title.
So Pure Poetry set you up for a bit of a fall because you're not allowed to use any rude words, so it's got to be pure.
Yeah, but that's also... Have you read my writings? Yes. You'll find that I'm not...
As pure as you think you are. Not as pure as the driven snow, right?
Not with Snow White.
No, not Snow White, yeah.
You know, she slept with 7 dwarfs.
Oh, did she? Oh my gosh, we won't go there. We'll move on fast. Are you going to read a poem or two from it for us, so that people can get a kind of a feel for what you write about and why how you write it as well?
Okay. In my early days, I wrote Set the World on Fire, one of my very early work. And I've now written that as a lyric for a rapper.
Wow.
But obviously, rapping is different format, so I've had to change it quite a bit. But here we go. Set the World on Fire. Anguish and pain surround, wars fought, greed for more ground. People desire power, others crave or power. In control of ourselves, feelings park on the shelves. Opinions matter more, voiced reason, not a chore. Waves crash against the rocks, barricades and hard blocks. Passports at the ready, things going so steady. Nuclear warfare threat, playing Russian roulette. Common sense prevails, sad stories and tales. Is it worth the sorrow, hope for bright tomorrow? Let's stop misery now, united front on show.
Wow, very topical, even though you probably wrote that a couple of years ago, yeah?
Yes, I think at the time the pandemic was on, there was sort of, everywhere you looked, nothing was the same anymore. You know, you weren't allowed to go out to do your weekly shop. You had to just go to the shop for your essentials. And it was like people were turning against each other rather than drawing together as a community. And the only other time that I'd noticed that was when I was in a refuge years ago. You sort of thought, because you're all in the same boat together, you're going to be steering the boat in the same direction. Actually, so much the opposite of that happens, where somebody will pick up the oars and they want to take charge, and you're sailing off down a river and God knows which direction you're going, and you just say, for goodness sake, you know, let's just talk on the same page, you know, let's get the oars moving in the right direction and get from A to B together, rather than, you know, we don't need all this upset, you know.
Yeah. Let's find another one. What other one would you like to read that gives a kind of a taste of the kind of poetry that you create?
I think my poetry has changed so much.
In what way?
It's evolved.
I noticed that by reading your earlier stuff and then reading this. You're not writing so much about nature anymore now, are you?
No.
And I'm not the only one that's noticed that.
Really?
So several people have probably noticed it, because you're quite public with the way you publish your work. You publish new stuff just about every day.
I do publish every day, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's what I've written the night before.
So what's the change then?
I think I love nature, but I don't want to be a one-trick pony.
Right.
And so, because I get so incredibly inspired by everything around me, I think I'm slightly OCD as well. Well, just been diagnosed with that, as well as PTSD, where I need change. So some people have OCD and they're doing repetitive stuff, and I'm trying to get myself out of that. I'm noticing
yourself outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Right. So, what kind of stuff are you writing about now then, which is different to the bucolic kind of stuff that you would write about in nature?
I think it's a double meaning. I relate things. I relate feeling. I can't talk about feelings.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. And even on paper, I can't write it. I feel like it opens up old wounds that I really don't want to open up.
Yeah.
So if I relate a feeling to something else in poetry, to another word, and also I'll start off sort of dark in a way, and then it will always end up positive, because it's like you've gone through that transgression of being this person that is victimized for whatever reason, and then you are stronger than that, without saying I am strong and I've got this. It's kind of like, you know, the smoother tones.
It's either Ernest Hemingway or Leonard Cohen or somebody else that actually said, we're all broken, that's how the light gets in. And I think that's pretty apposite, isn't it, for what we're talking about here? Because every poet I know, including me, has gone through some kind of trauma. and you included, and I guess that may be why we write so prolifically about things
Yeah.
that inspire us, or things that solve the hurt maybe inside us.
I think so. With writing, it gets it out there without
Yeah.
having to say, this has happened to me. You can write about anything, relate anything to anything, and it can have a double-edged meaning. So when somebody says to me, please give me the meaning to this, I get quite...
Because there may be other meanings.
Yes.
Yeah, and isn't it about poetry? It's about the reader rather than the writer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interpreting it.
Yeah. And so I had somebody not criticise, but sort of like, when somebody comments, I'll always see if they've given it a like or a love or whatever they've put. And that gives me a guide as to whether they're having a go at me for,
Right.
in the comment section, or if they are genuinely asking me a question. So the other day, this woman said to me, she just wrote one word comment, and it was, no, 2 words. It was, oh yikes. So
Really?
I was like, yeah.
And that was it?
And that was it.
Well, that could be...
Exclamation mark. Yeah, exactly.
That could be 2 meanings,
So
couldn't it?
I went, oh, thank you very much. Right?
See the bright
That's
side
me.
of it.
Yeah. And give a love a heart, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
And you give me love, I'll give you love.
Yeah.
And she went, oh, maybe I don't understand poem.
Oh.
And I went, maybe.
Whose problem is that?
Yes.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
said, and then she goes, maybe if you maybe tell me what your poem's about, maybe I'll get it. And I went, maybe, even if I told you, you still would be confused.
Yeah,
So let's
yeah,
just leave it there. And anyway, I haven't heard from this.
That's interesting, because I mean, a lot of poets use metaphors, don't they?
Yes.
And a metaphor can mean several things as well. Can't it, really? I mean, it can have a... And there are double entendres and double meanings in poetry as well. So really, it's not so much about what the writer's writing about, it's how the reader interprets it.
Yes.
That is important, isn't it, in poetry?
Yeah.
So there you are. I think she's on a losing wicket.
I must admit, I have had people in the past sort of like private message me and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?
Yeah.
And by the end of it, 4 hours, I've had a conversation with them, going backwards and forwards, and I've bamboozled them. And it's like, okay, have a nice life, bye-bye. And I'm
Bye
like,
for now.
Okay. Don't contact me, I'll contact you.
So you've got caged love
I
now.
have got Cage Love. I think that's one of my favourites at that time, because of, yeah.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Cage Love. Deep affections mimic the sun, burning deeply inside their soul. Hearts of two slowly become one, reflections under strict control. Bars contain the relationship, forbidden love safely confined. Passion like passing of two ships, hands touching, emotions combined. Paddling in the sea together, enjoying precious company. Anchored and attached by tether, feeling they are in Tuscany. Arms linked, they walk along the shore, incredibly nervous and shy. None of them have been there before, scared of the future, but they try. Discuss their dreams and desires, both agree they want the same things, igniting all their inner fires, flying under each other's wings.
That's really powerful, but it's also interesting because you're using certain words and phrases in there which definitely have a double meaning, or they're metaphors that mean something else. Passing of two ships, not really about ships. It's not a maritime poem.
No.
It's a poem about emotions. It's a poem about relationships. Why did you use the word Tuscany? Is that something that has a memory for you? Is that a place that has a memory?
It is a place that has a memory, but for a different reason to what you think it is.
Okay.
There. So it's almost like that feeling of being on holiday together on the beach in this glorious sunshine, sort of like, yeah, and the title kind of gives it away.
Yeah, cage love. Now, is that love that's been put there to be protected, or is it love that is trying to get out? Could it see two different meanings, couldn't it?
It could.
Yeah.
It could be forbidden love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or it could be love that's about fighting, cage fighting.
Yes.
We can get ridiculous
Deep
here.
into sea.
Get ridiculous here, can we? Caught behind bards.
Yeah. Actually, the picture that I took to that was actually a couple on a beach, and they were behind bars, like bards. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And so, and that just reminded me there and then, and I wrote that title in my notes on my phone at that moment. And I was actually on the beach. I think it was. I was either in Cornwall. Don't think the children with me. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, we were talking earlier on before this device here came on, and before you lot started eavesdropping on our conversation, and you were talking to me about an interview that you did for an American website.
Yes.
That intrigued me because we never got to finish that conversation. So, tell me about it.
Okay, so out of the blue, suddenly this guy messages me in my inbox and says, I am starting up a American website and I want you to log on and have a look around and see whether you can find your way around. And I thought, okay. And he wanted honest feedback. And now, I am shy.
Yeah, we've all noticed.
But at the time, I was incredibly shy, and so and I thought, okay, it isn't really my thing to have a look around a website. But I found it increasingly difficult, even though I pretty much say I'm pretty tech savvy to a point for my age. Thank you very much. So yeah, I just find it really, really hard to navigate my way around. So I told him. And I think he appreciated my honesty and changed the whole synopsis of his group.
Yeah.
And and then he said to me, well, actually, you're the kind of person that I want to interview. And so he was interviewing different people. He'd got in an artist who was not the greatest interviewee at the time, and I thought, oh my goodness, and he'd put her work out there on YouTube, and I knew that I wanted to do better, and so we set it up through a Zoom meeting. The day that happened, I set up my laptop, my phone was nearly out of charge, I had my phone on charge in front of the MacBook Air screen, and halfway through the meeting my phone died. It overheated because I've got the screen on with him Zoom call and so I was like, I'm so sorry, sort of like on the computer, kind of like inboxing Nathan to sort of say, I'm really, really sorry, but my phone's just died. And I don't know how long it's going to be to set it all up again. And then at the end of the recording, it was just doomed from the start. It was like, I'm sorry, you're so pixelated in it. I haven't got the best equipment. I'm like, really? And so he said, can you do a series of 3 interviews for me?
Yeah.
They're going to go out on YouTube. They're going to go out on this American website. And so I want you to sit in front of the video screen and pretend that I'm asking you these questions. I was up in that bedroom. Doors were closed, sort of like, giving it all this. And then I found that actually it wasn't too bad if I could do that, why couldn't I do live readings? And so
that's what inspired you to do all the live stuff that you do now.
And I thought it's a great way of getting people noticed, that it haven't been commented on for whatever reason. Life is busy, as we all know.
Well, you heard that here, folks. You heard it all here. That's the origins of Charlene's live readings that she does every week, in and out, every day almost. Yeah. Well, that's interesting that we've come full circle around, that we started talking about your inspirations, and now we're talking about you inspiring other people to write and maybe even to perform, because I've noticed an increase, at least on Absolutely Poetry website, of people coming in and reading their own poetry now. Some people are still, I think, scared stiff.
Yeah.
Others are less reticent, but still maybe a bit cagey. What would you say to people? How would you encourage people to present their work, especially to perform it?
I think it's a case of be confident with what you've written.
Yeah.
Everything is valid. You've only got to reach one person, right? And as a poet, you know what it's like to sit down and write, right?
Yep.
And you know what you mean by that poem. If it passes you as your own worst critic, you've already reached that person. Anybody else is a bonus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same with reading it. It leaps out the page. And if somebody reads your poetry and it takes it to a new dimension, why does it take that person to do that for you? Why can you not do that for yourself?
Yeah.
And, there's channels out there, there's YouTube, there's Instagram. I do live readings on Instagram.
TikTok.
TikTok. Yes,
Yep.
I'm a big TikToker.
Yep.
Or TikToks, as I call
Tic-tacs.
it. You're shaking your TikToks. But that took a lot to do.
And you've got Facebook, of course, where you can do live readings. And also Facebook and Twitter and all these other channels can be used to amplify what you've done on things like YouTube and
I've
TikTok
actually
and
doing it
Instagram.
on LinkedIn as well.
LinkedIn as well, yeah, that's another one, yeah.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
quite a few connections now that's
Yeah.
starting to build, because I think it's believing in yourself, and
Yeah.
if people will believe in you.
Would you say to people, look, go and do live poetry readings as well, open mic stuff?
I would like to see that happen.
Yeah. Have you done it yourself?
No.
No. I've done it once or twice and it's terrifying.
Is it?
It's like being a stand-up comic. You're there on your own with the microphone and with a big room full of people, and you've got to gather their attention to begin with, and then try and avoid them maybe shouting out at you.
And throwing
throwing things. But I think poetry groups normally are quite genteel. You might find one or two hecklers in the room, but I'm not doing well here, am I? Because I'm putting people off. But I think try it.
I'd like to
It's
try it.
worth doing. Try it.
Could we do it together?
Yeah, I guess so. If we could find a poetry group nearby where we know it's open on a certain day or a certain evening. I know several in Plymouth, but yeah, it would be getting it's about logistics really. But yeah, it'd be worth having a go. There's lots of ways of doing it, but I think open mic poetry, it's quite fabulous when you get the audience on your side and you can make them laugh and make them go and make them really think deeply about what you're writing about. It actually is quite a buzz, especially when you can get people laughing with you.
Yeah.
That is probably the ultimate buzz of being a live poet.
And the thing is, you can add accents. I mean, I had this thought come to me a while ago that wouldn't it be funny to do a poem that on paper doesn't mean anything, but you need the accent. And I did actually do that, and I'm not the best, but I gave it a go, and I think just for that alone was hilarious.
Your best Palmeiras accent.
Oh yeah! Oh my God!
Bristolian, isn't it?
Not very Bristolian, was it?
Very Bristolian. I remember our dad told me about that.
Did he?
I remember our dad. Yeah. Oh, Bristol, honestly. Yeah. That's where she's from, isn't she? From near there.
She is.
She's from in Avon anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy that did our extension, bless him, he's no longer with us now, but he used to stand upon that scaffold, and I used to go off to work and come back, and every Thursday afternoon there'd be a low-flying aircraft, sort of like military aircraft, and he'd go, "Quiz, Charlie, that was low."
That was low.
That was low.
So he was from there as well.
Yeah, he was there. Yes, I'm glad that you recognise that. My best accent I love to do is Welsh, because
but which Welsh accent? There's several.
yes, I know. I don't. Where am I saying this from? Because no. She was my RE teacher. No, seriously, I was.
She was your RE teacher. I mean,
She was my RE teacher. Yes. She wasn't famous. She should be. But anyway. No, like she was amazing, and I was really, really shy at school. But I sat at the back of the class. I didn't want to get involved, And then one day she had to go out and see Waka, which was the history teacher next door.
Yeah.
We always thought there was a bit of dalliance going on between those two. But anyway, so yes, that's another story. Hi, Miss Ainan. Hi, Miss Ainan. I love you, I do. Now then, one day I got in front of the class, right, and I picked up the chalk and I went like that, and mimicked her, and I went, now then, children, we're going to do a project on Moses. Well, with
Project.
that, project, yeah, on Moses. Anyway, with that, she came to the door and she went, Charlene, I didn't know that you could do that. And I said, no, did I? Anyway, I went home and I said to my mum, like I said, I can totally miss it. Anyway, my mum and dad.
You're going to get so many Welsh people writing in and going, oh.
I know. I do others. I do others. Anyway, so she said I said to my mama, I said, I can do Miss Ainan. So she said, oh, that's good. Yeah.
that's good, isn't it?
Anyway, Mum and Dad, right, the next week or so, they'd got teachers, and they were in the middle of this hall and they didn't know which teachers they had to go to. So they didn't know Miss Ainan. Anyway, they heard the talking and then they went over and they said, oh, there must be Miss Ainan. Well, how do you know that? She said, well, actually, she said, I do know how you know that because I caught you at door doing this with a piece of chalk. She said, was she good? Now, years later, her child went to a school opposite to where I used to live. Now, before I came down here, she got out the car one day and she, she said, hello, do you live right? I suggested you. Well, I often do live right in these parts. And I went, oh, it's me. Anyway, so there you go.
There you go. I think we ought to end there. you can't top that, can you?
No.
You can't top it.
I don't know.
I don't know you can top that.
I don't know.
Unless Tom Jones is around the corner. It wouldn't be unusual, would it?
I don't throw me to anybody, you know what I mean? But,
anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. And we're going to say goodbye because we're running out of tape. All right?